What's up, guys? We're doing something really special today, a trailer breakdown to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild Untitled sequel trailer from Nintendo's Direct E3 2021. As always, I'm Tim Gettys, joined by the boss baby himself, Barrett Courtney.
Tim, I appreciate how much we were talking about Nintendo after Gamescast or after the Nintendo Direct this morning on Gamescast, and we talked a lot about the Breath of the Wild trailer that we got today, but it just wasn't enough. I needed more, and I needed to break down every little thing that we can dissect from this trailer, Timmy.
Well, that's the most fun thing about this is the type of game, this is the type of trailer that just leads to a lot of, speculation, a lot of like, let's look frame by frame, let's see what's going on. I love seeing Twitter kind of go ablaze today with all the different crazy, wacky theories that like there's probably a lot of, where there's smoke, there's fire with this. So I'm pretty interested. You, of course, an expert when it comes to Legend of Zelda. If you guys do not know, anybody watching or listening to this right now, you should go to youtube.com/kindoffunnygames and type in with your pretty little fingers, Zelda in review. Barrett did a epic magnum opus project where he played through every single Zelda game, ranked them, reviewed them, talked about the story, talked about it, what he liked, what he disliked, all that stuff. Were there spicy takes? Of course there were, but that's what keeps it fun here. And I want to keep that kind of energy going. You with that more refreshed eye. I played all the Legend of Zelda games, but you played them all recently and some of them multiple times. So especially, I know Breath of the Wild is up there for you. So I'm excited. I'm gonna let you kind of be the guide for me as we go through this trailer of what your theories are and what theories you've seen today that you either agree with or disagree with for whatever reason.
All right, so let's go into it again. I was telling Tim right before we started recording that VLC is being a little weird, so bear with me a little bit. So yeah, this the opening portion right here. We get a little bit more of the malice that we got teased with in the first trailer, and a lot of the malice that we've seen in the very first game, the very first Breath of the Wild game. And we get a little bit of a quick frame of the malice eating up Link's right arm. And if you remember from the first trailer, we saw what seemed to be Link's right arm fusing with like this weird green arm that was holding on to dried up Ganondorf at one point. So it's something that just like a quick thought I have here is that at some point at the very beginning of the game when Link and Zelda are kind of exploring underground and they discover this dried up Ganondorf body that seems to be maybe imprisoned with a bunch of malice leaking out of it. The malice kind of attacks Link, and then this green arm that is that's holding Ganondorf in what seems to be some kind of prison state maybe tries to save Link and like sees Link as some sort of worthy user for this green arm, possibly Zonai technology. If you don't know, that Zonai is like this mysterious tribe that disappeared a long time ago, but they've left a lot of their stuff around the map of Breath of the Wild. So yeah, we see a little bit of the malice eating up Link here, and then we get like a very quick flash of dried up Ganondorf, as we saw from the first trailer. He had like woken up, and here he is like rising and waking up, Timmy. I'm scared of this
Wake up, Link. Wake up, Ganondorf.
Ganondorf, don't wake up, please.
I kind of love it. I love how much darker this seems than what we got in Breath of the Wild. I remember even playing Breath of the Wild for the first time, and in the opening minutes, like obviously after you see the vista and all that, going down and having the temple right there, right, and like you start getting the lore building of like the 100 years and all this, and that was so cool. Where I like that they kind of left you asking a lot of questions by presenting this really interesting premise in time and place, and seeing this, I like that they're playing with that a little bit more, like the familiar, especially with a character like Ganondorf, but having it be a lot creepier and scary than we've seen in Zelda for a while. We got hints of it, I would say, in Twilight Princess. We definitely got it in Majora's Mask, but this is cool.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like I definitely get the creepy vibes that people got from the first trailer, and definitely the way this trailer first starts off, I definitely get that. But once we get later in the trailer, it's interesting that people are still like, oh, it's like so dark and stuff, because there seems to be a good balance of like creepiness, but also like light and whimsical kind of stuff that we'll kind of dig into in a little bit. So
before we even move on with that, one of the theories that I've watched this trailer a couple times now, I think it's really interesting, the use of color. And and that stuff is always on purpose. And when you really think about Breath of the Wild, there was a lot of that kind of like blue, even with Link wearing the blue tunic just as his default, like, which was such a break from tradition for what we're so used to from all the different games. And on top of that, like the Sheikah Slate just kind of having that blue neon glow, and then the red glow and pink glow we're seeing here that you keep calling Malice, that was very much the bad guys, right? Like Hyrule Castle was surrounded
it's like
by
all that
like
red
whatever.
goo that you see around, like that was Malice. That's like what makes up like the Thunder Blight Ganon and like all those different Ganons, and even the Blight Ganon at the end of the first game. And so that's a good point out there, Tim, of like there's a lot of blue and a lot of red, and outside of green in nature, there isn't a lot of green represented in like technology and stuff like that
Until now. And that's the thing is I what we're seeing in this trailer, and again, crazy wacky theories here, but it's just, I think it's interesting the potential different characters we're seeing, but also, are we going to get kind of different gameplay styles? Are we going to get more darker stuff? A lot of us assumed that we're going underground Hyrule for this game, and this trailer doesn't seem to hint at that too much, but there's still some evidence of it, and it's usually it's involving the red, and it might be involving Zelda, whereas the Link we know from Breath of the Wild, we're still getting a lot of blue, but then in the sky parts we're seeing, there's a lot more green with the arm. Let's continue.
One quick thing too, just talking about the different colors and stuff. Something that shout out to YouTube, Zelda YouTuber Zeltic, who has so many great theories and knows the Zelda lore like the back of his hand. Like something that was pointed out of like like the blue, green, red kind of represent like the different parts of the Triforce. The Triforce was something that was kind of greatly missing from the first Breath of the Wild game, and like I wonder if we get any follow ups on what's going on with the Triforce in this story in The Legend of Zelda. Like I was saying earlier, you get like the representation of blue with technology, which is the Triforce of, what is it, knowledge?
Power,
and then like
wisdom.
Wisdom,
the
Triforce
power.
of wisdom, and then red and Malice kind of representing like the Ganondorf, and Ganondorf has always been tied to the Triforce of power. But then like besides Link being the embodiment always of the Triforce of courage, and besides of like grass and stuff like that, there was no like major representation of green, the Triforce of courage, except with the little tidbits of the Zonai tribe that were left throughout parts of Breath of the Wild and the map. So again, we'll get to that in a little bit and how that could all tie together. So I think I could just play this because there's just more of like the Malice rising up. And then we see Zelda falling to her demise, and I chose that.
Zelda's dead.
Zelda confirmed dead.
Right? Zelda falling down this little hole, darkness. We're getting a lot of that red, like I was talking about. And something interesting to bring notes to too is before they showed this trailer, they said this is 2 years after the first game. So they gave us the timeline, at least for some timeline that we're seeing here.
And I think this is interesting. A lot of people have been one of the main theories I've been seeing going around is like there's going to be 3 different elements of you're going to play as Zelda underground, you're going to play as Link on like the Breath of the Wild map that we all know, like on the ground and stuff, and then the character that we see up in the sky might not actually be Link, but someone else that we're actually playing up in the sky. We might be switching in between them. I don't entirely agree with that, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. I feel less confident that we're actually going to play as Zelda, which I know has been a popular theory that's been shared by myself in the last couple of years. Like, I think it would be cool to shake things up. I feel like we would have gotten something here that would have specifically said of like, hey, like here's like a like behind the camera Zelda action. Maybe they want to save like that as a surprise until we actually play the game. But it felt like a thing that Nintendo would want to like show off at least just a little tidbit of. So I don't know.
I feel like they kind of did though. Like I feel like with how secretive they're being in this game, but simultaneously showing us a fuck ton. Like this trailer is like they fed us today, you know. Yeah. And I think that they made some really interesting choices where while obviously this doesn't confirm Zelda's a playable character, I am still fully on board with thinking that she will end up being a significant main character in this game.
Okay. And so yeah, we see her falling even more underground. Like her and Link were already underground, as we saw from the first trailer, and then things open up, and then we have this character who a lot of people assume is Link. Gliding around and fallen. And again, this is what I was talking about. Like, there's an interesting balance of dark and almost like whimsy and almost Skyward Sword kind of vibes here.
I mean, this is the Skyward Sword intro, right? Like,
Yep.
when they first showed the trailer for Skyward Sword so many years ago, at the first E3 I was ever at, we saw Link run and jump off of that
And
mountain,
then, like, do that pose
just like this, and it's interesting. Like, looking at his arm, he has a robot arm. Link with a robot arm, not something I ever thought we were going to see. Fucking cool, all about it. But yeah, the green, the more traditional Link green here, but especially seeing this shot right after just seeing the cinematic of Link's right arm kind of being taken over by the malice, it's like, so if that's not Link, both characters have right arm augmentation. Like, that's kind of interesting. Is it different time periods? Is it history repeating itself?
I mean, like, that's what Zelda is all like. In the bullshit lore timeline thing, it's all about history repeating itself. If you don't know, like, Skyward Sword is technically the game that takes place before everything else. Or at the end of the game, Demise, who was the main villain, had cursed humanity to keep fighting him over and over again through generations, and that's like kind of what starts the whole like connecting all of the Zelda games together. But something that I noticed here, Tim, is like we've got this kind of green tunic, and something I forgot to point out earlier with that shot of Ganondorf specifically, because Ganon is like when he turns into the big beast. He's got like a kind of similar tunic here. And something that like I'm thinking of, and this was a kind of a theory when the first Breath of the Wild 2 trailer came out, Breath of the Wild sequel, whatever the hell you want to call it, is a lot of theories that we might get the story of this Ganondorf, whether it's the Ocarina of Time Ganondorf, which I'm feeling is less likely, especially because we don't really see like the scar that was left from Ocarina of Time and what was it? Not Majora's Mask, Twilight Princess and stuff like that. But there is a theory that we might get a backstory of hydrated Ganondorf and what led him to being dehydrated. And with this kind of like same kind of outfit going on here later on, with the similar kind of layout here, my theory is that this character that we're seeing behind is actually Ganondorf. And then if we go over here, I'm actually going to click over to this image. Oh, it, of course, showed up on the wrong screen. This is an image from Breath of the Wild, and this is when the old lady is telling you about 1,000 years ago, and the princess and the hero like came together, and they fought the evil Ganon. And you kind of see here, like, this is an image from Breath of the Wild 1, kind of longer hair and what seems to be kind of a green tunic little guy, and even like the feet are a little different. And as we see, this will probably open up again on the wrong screen. Yes, it did. I tested this all out earlier. I'm sorry, and now it's not working. But if we go here, like this character is also wearing different booties and stuff, or whatever the Greek people,
little gladiator shoes.
Yeah, exactly. And so my major theory here, and someone else pointed this out, is that we actually never see this character's face. Whenever we're in the sky, we never actually see them, and we'll see it throughout the rest of the video. Like, we never actually see their face head on. And so my theory, and this is like the kind of major theory that I've been kind of cooking up the last couple of hours, is that this is the first iteration of Ganondorf ever existing, and this is post Skyward Sword, but way before the events of Breath of the Wild. But this specifically right here, where we see this character up in the sky, and there's like all of these places in the sky that you can go explore. This is the very first human iteration.
Skylands.
Skylands, yeah.
In the sky.
This is the very first human iteration of Ganondorf, who wasn't immediately tied to Demise from the end of Skyward Sword. And my theory is that whenever we play these segments as human Ganondorf, it's going to be him eventually finding the Master Sword. If you Zelda fans out there remember, Demise was sealed sealed away in the Master Sword at the very end of Skyward Sword. And so I don't know if we've ever gotten a follow-up of, like, yes, Demise cursed humanity to fight him over and over again in generations, but has there ever been a follow-up of, like, him possibly escaping the Master Sword and him being able to essentially take over a human to be able to reincarnate over and over again, time and time again? And I think we might get the story of, like, the very first Ganondorf and, like, what their story with being cursed by Demise and kind of turning into this person of evil. So that's that's my major crazy theory right there. But
that's interesting stuff. And I again, like, we're eating today. Like, I think that this is awesome, and I love that there's so much to break down here and kind of, like, get crazy with. But I do, for as cool as that is, I do think there's enough evidence against it. Just simple things like, where's the robot arm on dehydrated Ganon?
That's a good point. Right. And again, like, again, theorize, and everything will be proven wrong that I'm saying today in a year, hopefully, of, like, maybe this is a certain power that, like, leaves him. Again, we're assuming that this is Zonai technology. Maybe once if this is human Ganondorf, maybe once he picks up the Master Sword for the first time the Master Sword is being picked up since the events of Skyward Sword, and Demise comes out and, like, curses him or whatever, maybe that arm, this technology no longer sees Ganondorf as, like, worthy to be able to hold it. So that's why the next time we see him, he's actually being imprisoned by the same, like, technology, this arm that's, like, holding dehydrated Ganondorf. There's a bunch of different things I think that could still, like, excuse it, but that is a good point.
I mean, But with that though, Barrett, I mean, it's interesting. We see in these first, like, 4 shots, right? Like, it literally goes from us seeing Link's arm being taken over by this shit to then seeing Ganon without that, and then seeing this with him with it. Like, maybe the malice stuff what giveth can taketh away, right? Like, maybe it just goes away at some point. But the other thing too is, like, well, I love the Ganondorf theory. I really, really, really do. And honestly, there is nothing more hype and exciting to me than the idea of, especially coming after Breath of the Wild, that was very story light in terms of direct plots, very story heavy in terms of lore and what it's building.
Yeah, and, like, hidden things and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would love if Breath of the Wild 2 did have a bit more concrete of an actual A to Z storyline, and I'd be thrilled beyond belief if it tied together Zelda, Link, Ganondorf, power, wisdom, courage in a way of gameplay of playing as all of them and through time or not, whatever. That's really exciting to me. But continuing to talk about what might be Ganondorf here, why would his hair be yellow? Why would he look like Link? This is getting maybe a little too Sora, Roxas, Kingdom Hearts. Am I a nobody?
It absolutely
am I this, or whatever?
Is, but here's my thing, is that, like, because this is the first human iteration of Ganondorf before, again, my theory is this is his human iteration before he becomes cursed by Demise. Demise Demise was the god that existed before Ganondorf, and was able to reincarnate as those beings. My theory is that if Demise is in this game, again, we're getting, like, really lore heavy here, so I don't know if Nintendo would actually want to do this, of, like, dropping a bunch of important things from Skyward Sword and, like, all of this stuff into this game. Like, my theory would be, if Demise is here, and once this Ganondorf, possible Ganondorf, runs into him, once Demise takes over, that's, like, when we get a transformation of human Ganondorf into, like, the Ganondorf that we typically know.
Now, here's the thing. I am only, like, I'm very into Zelda, but when it comes to the deep lore stuff, it hits a point where I'm just like,
there's a lot, and a lot of it's bullshit.
Y'all have your fun, but but one thing I do know is that Ganondorf, and again, I know Zelda is a legend, and there's a lot of iterations and over time, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
He's Gerudo, right? Which means he is, I remember there was some stuff about, like, there's a lot of female Gerudos, but there's only one male Gerudo every certain amount of time or whatever. And Gerudos have a couple defining characteristics. One of them is red hair. So
that's true.
With your theories, like, are they playing it some way where he has this power thing and that kind of creates Gerudos for the first time, and that includes red hair? But I don't know, something about it where I'm, like, looking at this white boy with yellow hair, not getting Ganondorf vibes. Although I saw it was Justin Davis on Twitter from IGN. He was tweeting about some of his theories, and he was saying that, like, his theory is they might just be asset replacing for this trailer, where in the final game, he was saying that a lot of the stuff that looks like is our normal classic Breath of the Wild blue tunic Link is actually going to end up being Zelda when we're playing it. And that's interesting. I can see them potentially pulling a Metal Gear Solid 2 type situation on us.
And like with like why I'm like theorizing a lot of like the tie-ins from Skyward Sword and stuff. Something I do want to point out is that Hidemaru Fujibayashi, who directed Breath of the Wild, is returning to write and direct for Breath of the Wild 2, was also the director of Skyward Sword, and that was their first major Zelda game that they directed. I think they'd helped out with some of the handheld games and stuff before that, but that was their first like major Zelda directorial debut. And so I do have a feeling that they might have a vision of trying to tie in all three of their major games and major like entries into this universe. So that was another like kind of like behind the scenes kind of thing that I wanted to point out as well. That's
very key. That's key information.
Just a reminder of like for people who hate Skyward Sword, of just like, hey man, the guy ended up helped making Breath of the Wild, and it was great. And like a lot of Skyward Sword helped Breath of the Wild become a thing. And then we see again maybe Link, maybe hydrated Ganon. We'll have to wait and see. Again, running through.
Stay here.
Yeah.
This is my favorite scene in the entire trailer.
It's so beautiful.
I just fucking love it. And this is my answer to the question of, okay, but how are they going to give us that sense of wonder that we got in Breath of the Wild 1? And like looking at this, I'm like, you motherfuckers, you got me. Something really, really, really interesting to me. And this is grasping at straws a little bit because of the way we know Nintendo and Pokemon Company work together or don't work together, however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
But I do think it's interesting that we're lining up in this place where we have Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and
Shining Pearl,
freaking big Pomplamoose Pearl coming out that take place in Sinnoh region, and then we have Pokemon Arceus coming out in January. That is like a going back to the past Breath of the Wildization of Pokemon in the same region. And I like that one's November, one's January. They're kind of getting us used to this world again to then be able to play a little bit more with the lore. We hope.
Yeah.
Because there's that familiarity. Them releasing Skyward Sword starting to make a little bit more sense that they're just focusing on that and not having Twilight Princess, not having Wind Waker, and maybe like trying to get more people in. So there are more people like Barrett out there banging the drum of like, hey, you should still probably play this just to get the storyline stuff to get into here. Because, especially as we're seeing like all these floating islands and Skyloft-esque areas,
exactly.
It's pretty cool.
Like that was another thing that I had thought of in the last couple hours too, and I'm glad you pointed it out. Of like maybe there is like a reason that they're like trying to focus in on like just releasing Skyward Sword on Switch for now, because maybe there are lore and story things in there that might be important and tie in with Breath of the Wild and the Breath of the Wild sequel before they bring in others, and before you get all the Zelda stories and stuff like that. Hopefully, Wind Waker and Ocarina of Time comes to Switch. I fucking hope to God, Tim. And then the other thing of like why like there's no real basis for this shot right here, but this I'm assuming this is like maybe a boss or some enemy or something, but for some reason this gives me like Skyward Sword boss vibes, and I don't know exactly like what boss they remind me of. I
know what it is. It's the color. Like, we didn't see color like this in Breath of the Wild. And especially when you look at around the sides of this, like, I will be the first to admit that Skyward Sword is not my favorite. But it had a lot of elements that I did really enjoy, including the characterization of Zelda and the big birds that I'm blanking on their names right now. But
Rito?
That whole thing... No. The birds they flew on.
Oh, yeah. I don't quite remember.
But those things, and just like Skyloft, as a whole, just like the world that they built there, I thought it was so unique for what we're typically see from Hyrule and variations on Hyrule Field over and over and over. And there was something very whimsical about the color palette they used, and that kind of like more. I mean, it was a step towards. Okay, we had Wind Waker, right? That was straight up cartoon. Then we had Twilight Princess that was straight up grimdark, and then we had Skyward Sword that kind of met in the middle, where it was like a more realistic, but it was almost watercolor paint type thing.
Yeah.
And then we got Breath of the Wild that straight up was just like, okay, no. Here's what we wanted it to look like, but we just didn't have the tech or the vision then.
Yeah.
And this to me kind of looks like, okay, cool. Now that we got all that down, what would have Skyward Sword looked like if we actually made it the way we wanted to? Because the design of this character and a lot of like just the colors and just look of it all feels more Skyward Sword than Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, especially with like kind of like the way like it seems to be like whatever material this is, kind of like that like sheet rock almost, and just like the design and look of it is a very like Skyward Sword-esque. And like also I forget, like the earrings here are like look kind of like eyes, and I'm kind of blanking on like what imagery we've gotten with that's similar to that. But
well, what imagery similar to this is I forget how to say his name, but Agneheim or whatever from Link to the Past, right? Where he had a very similar like kind of big eye looking thing,
a Ganem or whatever. Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that this relates to that, but yeah, you talking about the material here. It's like, yeah, Breath of the Wild. It's funny when you think about it. It's like there was the local wildlife or whatever of the moblins and all that, or you know what I'm talking about. But then also having like there was the big stone rock guys that we see a little bit more of later.
Yeah.
But really, it was the Guardians, right? Really, it was those metallic things that stood out in such stark contrast to the grassy fields and vibrancy of the world of that Hyrule. Whereas this, you know, kind of does feel a little bit more traditional.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, that's just a quick shot here. Or actually, I kind of want to maybe go back just a little bit here to see, because I think we got slightly a full look here. Like almost, like we see some hands down here. See like more of like a full body going on here. So this might be like some like training enemy, you know, like, oh, like I'm not really an enemy, but I'm here to like help you like learn how to like use some items and stuff like that. And some symbol that looks like almost like a broom here, which is interesting. All right, anyway, moving on. And then yeah, as I always forget the names of these big rock boys, but as we see the bokoblins with bigger horns.
Talons, right? Tal somethings.
Oh, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Imran pointed out like bokoblins have bigger horns this time around, which is funny.
Years later.
Yeah, time has passed and stuff. And again, I'm not too sure of like a lot of the enemies that we've seen, like bokoblins, moblins, and all of that stuff, and even the rock boys,
Talus.
like
Stone Talus.
Stone Talus. Thank you. A lot of them, when you defeat them, they don't stay around. Like they kind of dissolve, and it seems like they dissolve into malice. So I'm wondering if like a lot of these enemies are tied to the malice pouring out of dehydrated Ganondorf's body. That's another major theory, Tim, is that like the Ganon that we fought at the end of Breath of the Wild 1 wasn't the true Ganon. It was just like a major formation of like the malice that was pouring out of Ganondorf's body in the first trailer. If we want to take a look at that really quick, just as a quick reminder, a quick refresh here. So yeah, as you see, like all of it seems to kind of be pouring out from Ganondorf's body, and so that's another major theory, is that like a lot, like the Ganon that we fought in Breath of the Wild 1 was more of like a shadow Ganon more than the real thing. So hold on, I actually went a little too far here. So yeah, I love that we're getting like more complicated, like kind of like enemy team ups. It reminds me of like the challenge mode in Breath of the Wild 1, where you have like a lot of bokoblins like hanging out on things that are being like lifted up by like balloons and shit, which is really fun. So that'll be a fun time to like kind of get some more variation with the different enemies. So yeah, then we get this shot of what seems to be maybe Link on like a slab or a table or something, being healed by like the Zonai arm or the Zonai tech, whatever this ends up being. And if you like look up here, it's like more of his shoulder that could be damaged from the malice that had kind of eaten his arm earlier in the trailer. So yeah, maybe
Zonai uniquely Breath of the Wild thing?
I think so, from what I remember. Again, shout out to Zeltic, big Zelda YouTuber out there who has so many theories. I think I've learned most about the Zonai from him, and a lot of his theories about this mysterious tribe that we did not know about that disappeared for some reason. I think they are Breath of the Wild, like specific. I don't remember ever hearing about them in any other game. You know, comments, you can comment down below if I'm wrong on that one, but I believe that that's specifically something that was introduced in Breath of the Wild. But yeah, it looks like whatever this hand that was used to trap Ganondorf is now being used to maybe like save Link from dying from this attack of the malice that he had earlier in the trailer. And then we actually see him here using whatever power he might have gained to seem to stop time on this one specific object in Breath of the Wild. Originally, you would have used like the metal power to stop this and kind of move it around and stuff, but Link is stopping time on this guy and almost what seems to be reversing time on that guy. What do you think about that, Tim?
That is very fucking cool, and I love the kind of advancements of our familiar Sheikah Slate abilities and stuff. Real quick, I want to bring something up before we get too far from this. You keep saying imprisoned. You keep saying like Ganondorf being imprisoned or this or that, whatever. And I was like, I know imprisoned has to do with Zelda. I just don't remember how. Do you remember how? The imprisoned is a recurring boss and character in the Legend of Zelda series. It is demise rendered in beast form due to the seal placed upon him by the goddess Hylia.
Tim, we're doing it. We're doing it. We're figuring this fucking game out, bro.
Yeah, that is very fucking interesting. It's the big whale looking thing, kind of like Sin from Final Fantasy X, but like with feet.
Yeah, so that's
it's demise.
Yeah, that's Skyward Sword. So yeah,
so in the same way Ganondorf has Ganon, demise has the imprisoned. Pretty cool.
Okay. So yeah, we see kind of like Link for the most part how we know him. It seems like he's got like almost like something covering like the rest of his arm here, like new arm guards. Almost it seems like, or something at least a little different. Because this is like post, and you kind of see his hand here. That seems a little like dead and green.
A little red.
Yeah, and so yeah, that's what he's using. Do we think the Sheikah Slate shows up at all in this, Tim? Because I'm not even seeing it on his waistband here.
I imagine there will be some type of cinematic or something that shows that the Sheikah Slate is now just part of his arm or something.
Okay. So yeah, we see this like time freezing mechanic is what we're assuming here. And then this shot I thought was really interesting because I think there's a lot of assumptions on what's going on here. So if we freeze here, we seem to be underground in this the weird kind of plant creature, whatever the fuck this is. And then Link has like this straight up like dragon face on it where he's shooting fire from it, and I think there were some assumptions on Twitter that this was another power from his right arm, but if we notice here like he has this equipped on his left arm, and his right arm with like the Zonai technology is in the back here. So if like we go frame by frame, like he's using this. And so another thing that I'm kind of thinking of is that I don't know if the Sheikah Slate comes back. I don't know if we get all of those same abilities again. Maybe if we do play as Zelda, maybe Zelda's the one who has the Sheikah Slate because she's the one who's like really fascinated about studying all of that stuff and the Sheikah technology. Maybe she is the Sheikah Slate, and when she falls underground and stuff, if we do play as her, maybe Zelda gets some of those Breath of the Wild powers that we all know and love. And then with Link here, with like this new arm, I wonder if that's just one power, and I wonder if that is the time stopping and rewinding power. And then this dragon head, whatever this is something unrelated. And do we get the return of more traditional Zelda dungeon items, where we earn items throughout the game that do one specific thing throughout the course of the game? What do you think there?
I think that's really interesting. And when we were first watching it, I pointed that out, that there's a couple points in this trailer that do seem a little bit more dungeon, including this shot right here. Mm-hmm. And the use of this item, whatever it is interesting because I like where you're going with this. The other side is it could just be a weapon. This could just be
something you find.
A weapon, just like anything else that you just find and use for a little bit, a limited amount of ammo, and then boom, you're gone. This is like the power weapon that you want for a little bit. Because I remember there were similar things when you beat the Guardians or whatever in in Breath of the Wild. There was some elements where you get like weapons that were like doper than just a fucking stick,
Yeah.
but then they would go away after a
Yeah,
while.
they would still
But the
degrade
other
after a bit.
the other side is, what if it is kind of a mix of the more traditional Zelda, go to a dungeon, get a new item thing, but mixed in more with the Breath of the Wild type of gameplay where you don't need these things to progress, but it's like maybe you need the weapon just for that one dungeon, but then you have it for other things that will make things easier in other places. But I don't know.
I do
there's
think,
a lot of options.
Yeah, like that's been a big topic of discussion the last couple of years of like, do we see the return of more traditional dungeons? I do think we will see the return of that in the sequel here, and I do like where your head's at of like they will be used for like the classic Zelda reason to introduce you to a new item, to a new weapon that'll like throughout the entire dungeon, like for the first half of it, you run to a bunch of problems where you're like, oh, I don't have the solution to this guy. Then you get this new item or weapon or whatever it is halfway through, and then you're like, oh, this is like what I need to do to be able to solve like all of these puzzles. And then you fight a more traditional boss. This seems like a very different type of enemy from Breath of the Wild. This gives me more of like classic Zelda dungeon vibes, like you were saying, Tim. And then for the rest of the game, outside of dungeons, like it's kind of like Breath of the Wild, where it's like you can go at this situation in any different type of way that you want with all of the different tools that we've taught you to use throughout the different dungeons. So that'll be interesting here.
I'm pulling this out of my ass, but my assumption, based on what we're seeing in this trailer, especially that we're talking about the potentially 3 different characters, or iterations of the characters. It might be the same character in different timelines, or who the hell knows. But I do think that it might be a hint at different gameplay styles. And I'm not talking about characters playing differently. I'm talking about what the game actually is. When you look at Breath of the Wild, we very clearly have the 4 divine beasts and Hyrule Castle as a dungeon, but then you have the ridiculous amount of just small shrines. I wonder if a third type is going to be added to this, where we have big ass divine beast style areas that do simply use the powers that you have from the beginning of the game in very creative ways, where that what you just said about I'm stuck, but I know it's just because I don't have the thing I need. That's not the case. You have all the tools. That's what made Breath of the Wild so unique and different.
That's true.
But what if there was a more traditional Zelda game within it, where there was dungeons that do have these unique weapons, that do have that sense of progression of, well, I can't do this because I don't have this thing yet. And then there still is shrines on the other side that can kind of mix and match either with the weapons you get from dungeons or with the tried and true hey, you have all the tools you need. And imagine, like, one of the biggest criticisms people have of Breath of the Wild was that there were so many shrines, but they all had the same look. They all had the same music. They all had the same kind of vibe to it.
Yeah.
What if they really played with the colors in the same way the shrines were blue? What if there were blue shrines, green shrines, red shrines, and that differentiated what type of dungeon it was?
Yeah, what kind of style. I really dig that, and that's it's kind of similar to another favorite game of mine, Persona. There's this area in Persona 5 called Mementos, Tim, in the original version of the game, that was like the place that you would go grind, and it was cool for grinding, but like the entire time that you would spend there felt like very samey, no matter how many floors you went down. And an update that they did for Persona 5 Royal was like, each major new area had new music, had a new vibe and stuff like that. So like I think something similar could go on there, Tim, where it's just like little differentiators to have different types of shrines have their own feel aesthetically, gameplay wise. I really dig that. I like that theory. So yeah, if we continue on here, I really like this. Is probably one of my favorite shots, is this more underground vibe of like him using that flamethrower or whatever the hell it is, just because it feels so different from what we've seen from the Breath of the Wild kind of era. And then we see kind of this raindrop go in reverse and reform, and then right after we see whoever the hell this character is, I'm gonna call him Hydrated Ganondorf for now, kind of doing the same thing, not not actually like a water drop, but also going up, being able to kind of pop through, like literally plop through this like platform here. And then of course we see more of like these Skylands and stuff like that. We're gonna run into a lot of Skylanders here, and so I just, this is like a really cool thing, and like I I wonder so much, Tim, of what the fuck this game's gonna
I
be
mean,
about.
there's a lot of things. Another poll is like looking down, like that's clearly the Breath of the Wild map. Like there are areas that are familiar
Yeah,
that
this
are
is
that is
like right
definitely.
down here, like this little mushroom head. Like that's the little area that like would always like thunderstorm until you like solved the shrine puzzle around it. Like yeah, the
Yeah.
ground is definitely the Breath of the Wild 1 map. And like there have been a bunch of theories of like what's going on here. Like I do think. No matter what, whoever this character is, I think no matter what, whenever we see the game where there's like little islands in the sky, that is definitely in the past, and that will, whether this is Link, whether it's Ganondorf, and like this OG Ganondorf might have been the hero at one point before being taken over by Demise. Like this is gonna tell the story of like. The first like wielder of like the Master Sword after the events of Skyward Sword, because slight spoilers for Skyward Sword, a lot of that story was about creating the Master Sword, and so yeah, I'm just really interested in this ability too of being able to like kind of seek through platforms and stuff. Like Breath of the Wild 1 was all about climbing shit, and they're like, you know what? Instead of climbing shit, what if you just like went through shit? Wouldn't that be cool?
Well, I mean, it's cool. Like even just this one shot and everything you just said, like we're kind of seeing a lot of classic Zelda elements coming back, where there's this idea of unique traversal elements that we saw in Link Between Worlds, where you can go
Yeah,
into
and
the
Andy
paintings
pointed that out
and go from
too.
there.
Yeah.
But it's also the traditional thing of, okay, there's the light world and dark world and Ocarina of Time. There's the past and the future. Like, I do think we're going to see something similar to that. But what I think is really cool as well is not only does this kind of give me more traditional dungeon vibes than a lot of the designs of Breath of the Wild, but go backwards a little bit to where the puddle first starts.
The puddle specifically.
Yeah, like looking here, it's like, this kind of the grass and stuff that they're on there, that looks like mainland Hyrule.
Yeah.
Right? Like I think that what we're seeing here isn't a direct reality edit. Like I think that this is a fake out cut because
I'm not associated. Like they do this for more of the effect of like this going in reverse and going upward with this.
Because
I don't
this
think
this
that.
cut, it's just interesting where it's like this clearly is not him coming from the mainland. That's way far down there. This is like definitely from one island to another island.
Yeah.
In the sky, and so is all of these skylands that are here in this one shot, is this just one dungeon? Is this like, are all of these related? Because we don't see them in other parts of the trailer, right? And even when you look up in the sky, and it might just be we're in different timelines or something, but I kind of think that the sky stuff might be even a little more played up in this than it's actually going to have relevance in the final product, and it might just be one area.
Sorry, VLC is no longer paying attention to me or obeying my orders. So the trailer is just kind of going off on itself, going off on its own. But yeah, I kind of dig that. And then we go 2022. Maybe once this video ends, VLC will let me take control. I feel like whenever I do like next frame too much, VLC is just like, no, fuck you. Yeah, there we go. Now it resets.
And then another dumb fun thing I saw somebody pointing out on the internet is the final shot. If you can scroll forward to the Hyrule Castle bit, like Hyrule Castle being here, all of this, like this is such a familiar area, but it looks really different. And what time is it right now, Barrett? It's twilight.
It's twilight.
Twilight.
Baby.
That's just a stretch. But it's a fun stretch nonetheless.
Another stretch that I've seen a lot of, like with the Zonai technology with the arm, a lot of people are comparing that to Midna, who is the companion in Twilight Princess.
That is interesting. Yeah.
And then
I mean, even like kind of that stone design of her head thing, that is kind of more similar to the enemy potentially we were looking at earlier.
What was it? This little dude over here.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then like wasn't Midna's like ghost arm? Hold on, I need to look at a picture of Midna. Midna, let's see, not her true form that everybody thirsts over. She's got the long orange hair, but yeah, I feel like she does have like a green aura around her usually as well. And then like her arms. Like hold on, let's see if I can actually save this image. If we go down here, then we save, and then again we're kind of live editing here, y'all. So be patient here.
Oh man, I mean, I'm looking at a picture of Midna right now, and I am more shocked than I expected to be on like how similar this does look to some things we saw in this trailer.
Yeah, like if we look at Midna here, like that is like very Zonai-esque.
But even
and like
her little helmet thing.
oh yeah,
Like
absolutely.
look at the designs on it, the shape of it all. That
Yeah.
that even looks like what you called earrings earlier.
Yeah. You're right. So yeah, like, and this was a theory that I came up with in Zelda in Review, which you should go watch on youtube.com/kindoffunnygames. Because Nintendo has been like, Breath of the Wild is so far in the future that it exists in all 3 timelines, and I think that's kind of bullshit. I think that's a bullshit answer. I think they will eventually place it in a timeline when it makes sense for them to do so, and when they finally put together a story where it's like, oh, we want to pull from this specific timeline. And something I did kind of theorize was that Breath of the Wild was in the child timeline, hundreds of years later after Twilight Princess, which I believe is the most recent game we've had in that timeline. So if they go through and like they pull through from that world and bring back characters and like who is it, Zant?
You think they're gonna Days of Future Past this?
Dude, like here's the thing. It's like I compared Zelda to Fast and Furious, bro, in Zelda in Review, where like in Skyward Sword, they literally were just like, yeah, all the games are connected, and this is how it happens, and stuff like that. And like I think they could absolutely fuck, what was the movie that you just said? Days of Future Past is here. Like that's what Nintendo like does best, is like just their weird bullshit storytelling with Zelda that I will absolutely eat up because I'm just gonna think it's cool no matter what. Because yes, I'm biased as fuck. And so yeah, I could definitely see that. I could definitely see some of that happening here. And then one more thing of just talking about dungeon stuff. Hold on, VLC continues to be my enemy today. If we go back to the very first trailer here, and this is interesting, of like when the castle is rising up here, it's not as Twilight here, Tim. But another thing that I wanted to point out before like Ganondorf, dehydrated Ganondorf, like wakes up and stuff. Like here we see like more of a human form here. That might just be a shadow going on here. But where was it? There seemed to be like almost like an entrance to a dungeon type thing, and now I don't know where it is in the trailer for the first trailer here, and I'm losing it. Yeah, so right here.
Like this was a rad trailer, man.
This was so good. Both of these trailers are fucking topped here. The only disappointing thing about the second trailer is I wish we would have gotten a name reveal, but they might be holding that off for a very specific reason. We'll have to wait and find out. But yeah, this has got like dungeon entrance vibes here. Again, maybe like, and this does have like an underground vibe to it as well. Like maybe we do play Zelda in underground sections. And Link above ground and stuff like that. But as we saw from what was it, where he was fighting that like one weird plant thing. I do think I don't know if we're actually going to play as Zelda this time around, and I do think if we do get dungeons, I think there will be like an underground sort of thing with the dungeons, and I think we'll play as Link. But hey, maybe Justin Davis is right. Like maybe these are asset replacements and stuff, and these will be different characters in the actual game. Besides that, though, I don't know if I have that much else to say, though. Tim,
one thing we didn't really talk about was the music and like the reversal cues, but it's like we call
that shit like when we were calling it when we were watching
happening. Yeah. Which is another callback to Skyward Sword, though. They were the first time that Nintendo did that, where the Skyward Sword theme song, the Ballad of the Goddess, was just I forget what theme it was, played backwards.
I forget. I know what you're talking about, though.
I think it was just Zelda's Lullaby, played backwards.
Yeah.
And it made that. And with this, it's like, it's the Breath of the Wild theme, played backwards, which is very, very cool.
And then, yeah, we got like a little bit of a classic Zelda tune at this shot, too, which was like really good. And just enough. I wanted more. I wanted them to play more of that classic tune, but they just left just a little bit to keep us wanting.
The one thing we didn't talk about, and I don't think there's much to say, but like there is an obvious sky vibe going on, and here we have Hyrule Castle literally flying towards the sky.
Yeah.
Like what's the deal with what we're looking at here?
I'm as interested in you, and like it doesn't really add to any of my theories of where this is all connected and stuff like that. Like the tale from Skyward Sword, right, is that the people who lived in Skylofts were like the last like living humans that Hylia had saved because the Earth or whatever the planet wasn't safe for them anymore, so she had created this like little haven for them to live up in the sky. Maybe it's something to do with that, but as we see here, like the malice is like really like rising up and stuff, and as we see, like there's no longer like the big pillars from Breath of the Wild that are surrounding Hyrule Castle. Just wanted to point that out as well. So maybe they like go into the ground, and maybe there's like a bigger device going on that's making Hyrule Castle like rise up. Again, I feel like because there's so little evidence of the Triforce in Breath of the Wild, except for like little context clues here and there, maybe this is all going back to Ganondorf's scheme of trying to get the Triforce again, and maybe there's some hidden secrets in Hyrule Castle that we have not been able to find just yet because they didn't put it in Breath of the Wild 1, and they're gonna reveal some shit in Breath of the Wild 2.
Fantastic stuff, man. This looks great. Thanks for hanging out with me, Barrett, and nerding out like only we can about The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild Untitled sequel. Let us know in the comments below how hyped you are, what you want to see, if you think we're crazy, or if you're kind of excited about some of the things that we've said. Either way, we appreciate you. Thanks for hanging out with us on twitch.tv/kindoffunnygames, youtube.com/kindoffunnygames, patreon.com/kindoffunnygames, and podcast services around the globe. Search for Kind of Funny, and we probably have a show that will suit your tastes. Again, I appreciate you all. Thank you so much. Till next time, goodbye.